Hello. Yeah, I'm looking for the count. It looks like people are coming in. We could, yeah, we could probably get started.
Awesome.
Very excited.
I'm
Excited
very
to be here. And it's the final day of Startup Week.
I know.
Happy and sad. It's
It
been
always is.
wonderful.
It always is, right? Like Boulder Startup Week is always so phenomenal. And I'm really glad that this year they didn't just let it go. We just bit the bullet and did the whole digital thing. So shout
Yeah,
out
it's
to
been
all of you
amazing.
leaders.
Made it happen.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I know you guys worked your butt off, so thank you.
Well, thank you for leading this event. I'm so excited. I know a lot of people are too. And it looks like we drew a big crowd from really all over the place. And yeah, I think researchers, non-researchers, I think we can, yeah, share a lot and learn a lot on many levels. So yeah, we can go ahead and get started. Um, I'm Allison, leading the research track in Boulder Startup Week 2020. Um, Today's event is prepping for the hunt in remote work, preparing for um, a very new and different job market with remote skills and how to showcase them. So we want to give a warm shout out and thank you to the sponsors of Boulder Startup Week. This is a free conference and it's been taking place in all of our homes across the state and the country. So yeah, we couldn't do it without the Downtown Boulder Partnership, CU Boulder, Techstars, Name.com, and Honey, and the wonderful organizers of Startup Week. So we're so thankful to be able to pull this off.
Awesome. And thank you to you, Allison, and your team for putting together the entire UX research track. I don't know if people are aware of this, but this is the first time we've had a UX research track. I think we've
Brand
had a
new.
general track before, but yeah, brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, we were part of the design track last year, and we hosted two events, and we had a great turnout, and we made it our own this year.
Yeah.
So thanks for making it possible by showing up, everybody.
Honored to be here. Honored to be here. All right. So prep for the hunt. We're all feeling coronavirus and all of its effects. We know it's global, and Harvard Business Review recently said this, that the pandemic is expected to fundamentally change the way organizations operate literally for the foreseeable future. I've heard other arguments where they think it will change forever. Some of the research that I'm currently doing in my job is for the addiction recovery space. And so they've had to adopt a lot of telehealth, and we're currently doing a lot of research to see how much they think anything will go back to normal. Will they be able to put that telehealth down and go back to the way it was, or do they even want to? So awesome stuff. As of a couple of days ago, all of these companies made very public that everybody can stay home basically until the fall, until the end of the year, and some of them just indefinitely. So Twitter made this interesting announcement that for some of their employees, hey, work from home. It's working, your productivity is fine, don't worry about it. And then it's not just tech companies. There's Capital One that announced wait until September, stay at home. And Nationwide even permanently closed some of its offices, turned them into remote working spaces. If anybody did in the future want to leave their house and work remotely in an office setting. But yeah, some of those offices are permanently closed for them. And I checked to make sure that Nationwide was even hiring, and they're hiring a UX researcher. So go figure. I don't know if that one is a remote job, but they are hiring. Lots of people are hiring. So who am I? I'm a UX researcher at Glue. I've been there almost 3 years. We are a technology platform for organizations that care about personal growth. So I mentioned the addiction and recovery space. We also work a lot in the church space, and really any organization that cares about the advancement of personal growth in their people is who we work with. It's pretty awesome, I gotta admit. I have been a researcher for about 8 years. I'm one of those people that was doing research before I really knew what research was. So there's that, but it's a great story if we have another context to say, I was like, oh goodness, what's this? I love this. Holy cow, this is a real thing. And I find that a lot of people have that same experience. Like, I can do this full time. Are you kidding me? Let's do this. I'm also a seasoned mentor. I founded the Hexagon UX chapter out here in Denver. And we have a mentorship program that we got kicked off a while ago, and we missed out this year. We didn't have all the resources that Boulder Startup Week has, but that's all right. It's not going away. I'm also a founding member of Analyze Boulder. So all of our researchers that are also data geeks and care about deeper analysis or want to have a touch of data science either on their resume or just in their head, that's a monthly meeting. Proud to announce that I am a credentialed coach. I'm a career and leadership coach. I've actually been coaching for 2 years, but now I've basically earned my degree, if you will. So super excited for that. And I know a lot of you are probably here because you already know about this rapidly changing world and how things aren't going to change. A lot of my current coaching clients are, looking for work, but wondering if it's them that's not putting out the right portfolio or LinkedIn or resume, or if there really is this hiring freeze and what are other people experiencing. So I want you to know that, yes, not everybody is hiring, but yes, people are hiring and there are jobs out there. And so now is a great time to either start your portfolio or rework all of your stuff, and you're in absolutely the right place to get that going. So what we're going to go through today is very similar to a program that I have coming up, and that is all built out of patterns that I've seen from the last 2 years of coaching. But what we'll talk about today is you have aimed your arrow at getting a remote job in UX. And so what does that take? Obviously you need your UX chops, but there's something extra in remote work. So what are they looking for when they hire someone, when they're to vet these candidates? And what I've seen, oh darn, my internet connection is unstable. So if anyone has any wonkiness going on, I apologize. What I have seen is that these 5 things are really bubbling to the top of the list. As far as what they're going to be looking for. So communication, and it's not just do you communicate, it's a little more specific, and we'll go into that. They're looking for your impactful outcomes. They're looking for what is this person's intrinsic motivation, because they're going to be home, right? Are they going to play with the 3 kittens that they have in the other room that they're fostering, or are they going to actually do their work and perform well at their webinar or something like that? They're also looking for tech-savvy people, and that might not mean what you think it means. And then I have this big surprise that I'll reveal right at the end of unpacking that. So let's get started. With communication, like I said, it's not just can someone present themselves? Is someone articulate? But in these written and verbal communication that you're putting out during the interview and then during your job, and let's be honest, during all of these assets that you're putting out in the world, your LinkedIn, your resume, your portfolio, they want to know if they're looking for it being clear. They're looking for it to be really short. Everybody's got these attention spans of a pea, and none of us are left out of that cultural change. So are you able to write an email that is short, articulate, to the point, very clear? And are you able to do that in a way that is quick, that is very responsive to the person that you're responding to? And ultimately, are you able to show that you're so effective at communication that you're being redundant to make sure that you're communicating in different ways? So sometimes people are really comfortable communicating on Slack with their team. Other times people only want to see it in email, or they want to have some sort of record somewhere else. So they're looking for these patterns of, hey, when you talk about a project and how you collaborate with your team, do you have examples of, you know, we did this rapid stuff on Slack, and then I summarized everything, sent an email, sure that the stakeholders were informed, and kept it all short and articulate. So it's not this long, drawn out, every detail, things that are unnecessary. It's really concise. And if you guys have any questions along the way, feel free to pop it into the chat, and I'll try to address them as we go on, but we're definitely going to have some time for questions later on too. All right, so impactful incomes, and you know, isn't that so much of what UX is all about? So I love that this is right after communication, because even if your work leads to a company making millions more dollars and adding that to the bottom line, unless that's communicated really well, people tend to, you know, forget those details and not put the points together and draw the conclusions that maybe you have. So they're not necessarily able to see your impact without actual tangible deliverables that they have in their hand, or a story that really draws everything together for them. There's just a good chance that it'll be kind of lost or put by the wayside, or that one jerk that is probably in every company will weave it together and take credit for it, right? Am I right? Is there always that person? So in an interview, I would love for you to really think about what you believe you can bring to their table, right? So what is a difference that you can make on their teams? What is a difference that you can make in their business? Companies are really starting to look for, are you thinking large enough? Are you thinking about the business in your UX work? Are you thinking about the impact this company can have on the world? And what problems you really need to dive into, right? Like, it's all fine and good that you can create a persona, but what is going to happen with that persona, with that work, to really impact the world, impact their bottom line? And they want to hear that story. All right, one of my favorite things, psychology. Oh, post your questions here. Oh, thank you very much, Allison. Yeah, please do. So intrinsic motivation, we all know motivation, you know, what makes people tick and go and all of that. And we do that in a lot of our research. But there's intrinsic and there's extrinsic motivation. So really it's the carrot versus the stick versus, in my case, cheesecake. So intrinsic motivation is when you really have this internal enjoyment. It naturally satisfies you. I'm going to eat that cheesecake because I can actually enjoy every single darn bite. And I'm not motivated to think about what it does to my thighs, but oh well. The carrot and the stick are a bit more about extrinsic motivation. So what sort of rewards need to be dangled in front of you to make you move forward? Or what sorts of sticks need to be wielded behind you to make you move forward? When you're working remotely, since someone can't see your process, can't see what you're doing, can't subtly influence you quite as much as they could if you were in the office, they want to know what really inside is making you wake up in the morning. What makes you tick so much that you're going to be uncomfortable, do the uncomfortable things without someone needing to babysit you or look over your shoulder? When you're remote, they're just that much further away and have that much less control. So they need to know that they can count on you. And being able to show this intrinsic motivation in the projects that you put forward in your portfolio, in the way you talk about whatever extracurricular things are related to your UX work, for example, really gives them something that they can sink their teeth into and start to understand who you are. All right, tech savvy. So I mentioned that this might not be exactly what you think it is. So I'm not saying that you need to learn to code. I'm definitely not saying that you need to know every tool out there, every bells and whistles about all design principles or anything like that. What I am saying is, when you're at home with your own computer and dealing with all of that, are you able to get yourself out of a bind? So right now, I earlier had a message that said my internet was unstable, right? I'm confident that no matter what happens, even though I haven't done a meeting, haven't hosted a meeting this large from my house, whatever happens, I'm confident that I can take care of it. I can, basically be calm in the face of trouble, right? And that goes for the people that we're interviewing or having participate in our research. That goes for other stakeholders, and that goes for in an interview as well. So can you manage your own technology issues from a logistics standpoint, from a social standpoint? Are you going to fall apart and potentially make other people on the call uncomfortable? And from an emotional standpoint, like I said, are you going to fall apart and not be able to perform your job? Like, that's the level of tech savvy that I'm talking about. The second piece of that is, are you able to learn new software easily and quickly? So you're not necessarily going to have all of the tools under your belt that a company is using. Like, maybe InVision really well, but they use Sketch. Are you able to pick up on that? And I purposely chose a design thing because most of you guys are researchers and we're not necessarily doing design as well. All right, so you ready for the big reveal? The big shocker of a thing that they're looking for? They're looking for whether you've done remote work before. And I know, I hate this. So how are you supposed to get the remote job if you haven't done remote work before, but they want you to have done remote work before? It's that classical catch-22, right? Like, brand new UX researcher is fine as long as you have 5 years experience. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's the ultimate frustration. So instead of looking at a job posting and saying, oh, well, they want people that have done remote work before, I haven't done that, let's dive deeper into why they would want someone that has done remote work before, because you can address that more easily than just the checkbox. So why would they want that? Doing remote work is like super fun at first, and then you get really sick of the same four walls that are around you. And then you get lonely, and then you get disconnected from everybody in the world, and things kind of start to fall apart. They want to know that you know what you're getting into. They want to know that you have a plan for what it's like to work from home. When I transitioned to work from home, my desk was originally in the same room as my partner's desk. And I purposely moved it into my bedroom to just have some separation between us. We have a small condo in Boulder. Doing that, I had to make sure to take care of my sleep hygiene and not be at my computer all of the time, and then no longer have this personal association of, hey, I'm in my bedroom, this is where I go to sleep, and then not be able to sleep. So if I were looking for remote work, I would specifically tell that story and what I did during the coronavirus times to make sure that I took care of myself, to make sure that my time management was on point, to make sure that my productivity was on point. And I guarantee that you can find some sort of story or some sort of plan to be able to tell that story yourself, whether you have done official remote work before or not. So ultimately, they want to know if you're a safe bet, right? Like, so often, and I see this in my coaching clients all the time, they don't see the vulnerability in the people that are hiring. They only see, oh, this person has an opportunity, they want stuff, we're going places. They're also nervous too. There's a reason that there's a joke out in the world that says no one got fired for hiring IBM. And I know it's a little outdated, but nonetheless, they do want to go with a safe bet, and it's your job to show them that it's a safe bet. Does that make sense? Okay. So I mentioned a few things woven in there about all of that, but how are you going to help them believe that you are all of these things that they're looking for? And ultimately, that's why you're here, spending an hour with me at this webinar. So before we move on, I want you to think about what brought you personally to UX in the first place. And if you have something off the top of your head that you want to throw into the chat room, I would love to hear it. I know it takes a little while to type, so no worries. I'm going to tell you, for me, why I'm in UX. I like asking hard questions. It's also why I became a coach. I want to get to the bottom of things, like what's really there. I like making people's lives easier. And I use empathy, I use data to really make people feel relief. To make them feel delight, right? Like that goes for researching for products and services and for coaching. All right. So that's not much of a difference in why I do UX. Oh, great. We've got someone. Started building websites in the early 90s, which I guess was the beginning of UX. Totally agree with you, John. It's just a term that's evolved, but it's this suite of things that we do to really try to deliver great products, right? And we've shifted processes and all of that. But do we know why we do UX? Awesome. What intrinsically motivates you to be in this role? And I'm actually going to pause here because I want to hear at least someone. I enjoy seeing a bug and figuring out where it came from, as well as how to fix it and make websites and apps run more effectively. Awesome. I like solving problems and then the challenge of how to solve them better. Yes. I want to get that root cause analysis going too. All right, pivoting to UX from a decade of documentary editing because I'm passionate about storytelling and how mapping UX data into stories. Katie, you and I need to talk. Scott says, I'd actually argue that UX came from human factors, which got some exposure in the mainstream during World War II and studying aviators. All right, thanks, Scott. And that goes in line with what I was saying. It's this continuum of a suite of things. All right, so to me, we're doing all of these things to improve something, to make something better, right? And to me, what's under all of that is the relationship that a product has with their user, or I should say a user has with their product. But that product is often in between us as researchers. We help the product. That product helps people's lives. To me, that's not much different than how trust is built. Working in disability services and the need for accessible design. Awesome. Thanks, Lorraine. We need people like you. All right. So the general rule is that trust is built over time. So we'll end up talking about how are you going to build that trust, whether it's over time or whether it's quickly. When we make products, I'm just trying to really draw the parallel here for you guys to communicate clearly. when we make products that are intuitive to use, that is our fast way of giving the user some reason to trust the product. They can trust that their data are going to be safe. You're not going to take their credit card and go somewhere else. They can trust that if you pay for something, you're actually going to deliver it. They can trust that they're going to get good information from your blog because of how you've organized it and put it forward. So much of what we do is building a product that is trustworthy. And for us as UXers, we have all of these assets when we're looking for a job. We have LinkedIn, we have our resume, we have our portfolio, we have the presentation that we're going to give during an interview, any other recordings of presentations that we've given, we can throw on YouTube or whatever platform. We have articles that we've read as we get further and further along in our career. And we have this support that we can ask for in the world. So we have all of these things, but way too often, I don't see us turning the mirror of the UX process onto ourselves and building better products, better assets for ourselves, right? When we are looking for a job, there are literally some pretty basic personas that we need to communicate to. There's the HR person who has maybe been given some buzzwords from the hiring manager. There's your other person on what to look for as far as screening for somebody. There's the team that you need to communicate to. And I mean, depending on how large the company is or what the industry is, the attributes of these various personas are going to be different. And yet we still operate as if there's a set way and expectation of how all of this stuff is supposed to look, when really it's just a giant UX problem, and ultimately it's what we're good at. Am I blowing anybody's mind? Because it kind of blew my mind when I saw it all together. And no, I don't really smoke pot. All right, so like I said, I've been doing career coaching for 2 years. I've been helping people get into the industry. I've been helping them level up in the industry. I've been helping them feel more empowered and confident at work so, you know, they can settle into a new job, for example. And I started to see this pattern emerge, you know, researcher in me. And I developed this process to get people from wherever they are at that point to where they want to be, most likely in UX. And instead of stuck where they're at, somewhere, you know, in a great job in a company that makes sense for who they are. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to go over the basics of each of these. And for what it's worth, if you're going to take any screenshots of this talk, this is the one to take away. So I'll stay here for a little while just to give anybody a chance to take that screenshot. So I'm going to go over the basics of these. And it's because each of these steps is really an opportunity to show the hiring manager, the other personas, that you have the 5 things that they're looking for so that they can trust you, so that they can trust that they're making a good bet when they decide to give you that offer. All right, so we've already done the aim your arrow, right? We're not going as deep as we do in my actual coaching group, but our arrow is at remote work, okay? Yay, mind blown, thank you, Katie. Thanks, Allison. All right, so because we've already gone through the first one, we're not gonna go over that again. So when I talk about, and we're not gonna go in order, but architect your assets. So using that UX process to really develop the UX of yourself. Some of the key things that I see completely skipped over are starting on paper. Now, I have to even remind myself to do this, right? Like, I knew I was putting together this talk. I had all of these ideas swirling around in my head. I go into Google Slides and then I have writer's block and I'm tense. That's not going to work. Like, creativity and clarity are not linear processes. Creativity and clarity are not linear processes. So I reminded myself to go on paper, have this notebook, drawing a bunch of things out, doing my secondary research, pulling all of these things together until I finally have this presentation. You need to do that for your portfolio. You need to do some brainstorming, some expanding and contracting of all of these ideas and what you want to communicate and put out into the world. People have to understand who you are so that they can hire you with confidence. All right, so start on paper, spend time with the information architecture, make things feel pretty good, right? Because we all know design is also building trust. And it doesn't have to be your own personal design. This is a template. I personally am loving this template on this presentation right now, but I didn't design it from scratch. There, be authentic. I just told you something that maybe you didn't know that was a little bit vulnerable, but nonetheless, it's authentic, and I'm not gonna apologize for it because it's authentic. And ensure that your services, you as a UXer, are easy to use. And what I mean by that is your portfolio easy to navigate. When someone arrives, wherever they arrive at your portfolio, is there context for what they're looking at? Like, have you thought about where that persona, the HR person, for example, or a recruiter, might be in their head to give some empathy to what they're experiencing when they try to ingest your information and vet you as a candidate? Are you communicating your intrinsic motivations clearly and concisely on your LinkedIn, in your resume? It ultimately comes down to, do people understand who you are? Last thing on here is when people reach out to you, are you able to respond quickly in the ways that they're contacting you? I know this story is pretty old, but on one job board, I was using my, junk mail Yahoo account, and this actually pretty cool job came through there, and I completely missed out on it because I just stopped checking the spam account that much. So don't do what I did years ago. All right, next step. Exemplifying your value. So it's the subtle stuff that makes the case for you. I want you to show pictures exemplifying that you've done some sort of remote work, even if it was a side project. And please stop apologizing that whatever project you're showing is a side project, because it's still a UX research project and it's still work that you've done, whether you were paid for it or not. Just side note right there. Tell a funny story, have some screenshots of the impact and the change that you've created, either for a team, for a product, for a whole company. And maybe some examples of what gets you up in the morning. So quick question, and get over to the chat. I want to see how many yeses and nos. I haven't practiced polling, so we're not going to do that. Have you noticed that you haven't seen any pictures of me in your Boulder Startup Week experience where I'm not building my credibility? Every picture you saw of me up until this point was me doing remote work. This particular, yay, Katie noticed. This particular image is me on a panel, is me giving a talk, right? And I'm show that instead of just, a lovely little headshot or, me with my foster cats, to show you that you can trust that I've done this before, that I'm not talking out of my ass, basically. So what I was doing with those pictures and what I want you to do going forward is to plant the seed and show these examples of what you've done. Use this space, the space of your portfolio, the space of being able to attach projects to LinkedIn, the banner on LinkedIn, as ways to show context of who you are and where you're going. They're all ways to build trust. An example of what motivates me to get up in the morning. I purposely threw in there, hey, I'm not showing you a picture of my foster cats. Well, now you know that I foster cats and it's important to me, right? So you have an idea, a little idea of me personally. All right. You can also, I love the tech savvy one. You can tell a funny story of how something went wrong technically, maybe during a usability test that you did online, and maybe how a teammate complimented you on how you handled it. This happened to me, but that's the basics of the story, and that's all that matters for now. All right, this is what got me started in this whole coaching world. Meet your monster. In order to exude confidence, that inner critic in your head needs to quiet down. That inner critic needs to get into the passenger seat so that you, the real you, can be in the driver's seat. And I work with coaching clients constantly to pull these apart and to really build up the ability to say, I can do this for your company and not fall apart. So this inner critic, these stories that we tell ourselves, all end up coming out in ways that the human mind really understands how to pick up on, even if they can't articulate it. It's really in the older part of our brain. So if we don't actually believe that we can do what we say we're doing, that we can help a company, that we deserve the opportunity that is in front of us, it will show in our posture. It will show in our body language and our tone of voice. And it will show in how we command space. And yes, there is space to be commanded on a Zoom call, on a virtual thing, on a webinar where a lot of you are not able to participate with your voice, for example. And I go over that a lot with my coaching clients, but I just want you to know that that is real. And there is a lot of stuff that you can Google and read out there. All right. Analyze your approach. So every hiring manager wants to know your process. This is like the classic UX question, whether you're a researcher or a designer. It's always like, oh, well, how do you do your projects? Well, that's not going away. But this is not where you just spit out some diagram that you saw online or try to fall in line and expect that whomever you're talking to knows the, Stanford method or the IDEO method or whatever. You can't shortcut with things like that. Again, sharing your approach is all about building trust. They want to know if you're going to fit into the way that they do things. They want to know that you understand your process enough that you're going to be able to do it by yourself remotely. They want to know what it's like when you collaborate with people. I mean, in person is one thing, but online is a whole other thing, right? So are you going to be able to, get stuff done? So basically, is your process going to meet their needs? That's the timeline that they are looking for, the collaboration methods that they have, all of that. It's also your style of communication and your energy. Are they cultural fits? For me, I don't really fit into like a Washington, D.C. or stuffy corporate environment. I say fuck way too often. It's just not going to happen. yeah. This is also a really great opportunity or point in the interview process to be able to share those impactful examples that we talked about before. One of the things that I really push my coaching clients to do is to hunt down the results of their work. Later on in this talk, I have a video, and I'm just looking at the time, so I want to make sure we get to it, that exemplifies that. Even if you've left a company, there are ways to figure out if your work had any impact, or at least to try to draw the line between those 2 points. All right. Distill your story. I've changed careers massively twice. I started out with a degree in economics and started a photography company. I was in Los Angeles doing wedding photography and preschool photography, and I decided I needed more than taking pretty pictures. And I went back to school and kind of did all this soul searching and realized I wanted to be a scientist. And so going from photographer to scientist is kind of ridiculous. I did it. I ended up working at CU Boulder at the National Snow and Ice Data Center. I also worked for 2 years at the Pink Building in Boulder on the Hill, the National Center for Atmospheric Research. And I met those goals, but I only did that because I was able to string the things about photography into why I wanted to go where I was going. And you have to do that as well. Maybe it's not as dramatic as that, or maybe it's not as, I'm a teacher transitioning into software development. Yay! Welcome to the software world. And you poor teachers do not make enough money. So I'm glad you're joining us in the software world. You have to really spell it out for someone. Otherwise, they're going to fill in the gaps with whatever their own experiences are. And maybe their own experiences were someone that was being fishy or someone that they didn't trust. You have to be so clear that they can really understand who you are and where you're coming from and why something makes sense. This really struck me when I was doing some of my first academic papers. I had a hard time writing them because some of the things I was like, well, it's obvious. Like, oh, you know, there's that person in research, there's that person. These all fit together. Like, everybody reading this should know that context. Well, no. I had to learn that lesson. And it turns out that that lesson really applies to changing careers, changing jobs, explaining why you got fired, all of that stuff. Any gap in your history. I see moms apologize all the time. Apologize to themselves, to everyone around them, without even realizing that they're apologizing because they took care of their kids and took time off work. You don't need to do that. Just draw the parallel from where you were to where you're going. All right, because we're a little bit low on time. Allison, you're gonna absolutely love this. So I made a 3.5-minute video just to give you an example of what 3.5 months worth of work can look like. And, ooh, I might have to share my screen differently. Give me a second. Can you see? See what I want you to see? Almost. That's working. Okay, so now I've optimized Zoom, so fingers for video. So fingers crossed that you can actually see and hear this well, but I'm gonna let this play for 3.5 minutes.
Bass Pro Shops in 20.
No.
I worked at Cabela's.com as a lead UX researcher, leading up to the merger with Bass Pro Shops in 2017. Our design manager really wanted to set us up for success and made sure that we redid all sorts of work. We worked on personas and the user journeys, the checkout funnels for logged in, for guest users. We really made sure that everything was on point. I am going to dive deeper into the information architecture project that I got to lead. Did you know that Cabela's.com generated $1 million? And that's B with a B, $1 billion. In revenue. I was thrilled to be working on a project at that magnitude. Working with the design lead, he helped me to navigate some of the company protocols. And after doing some baselines, I used the card sorting method to determine what might need some alteration at the higher level. But this was no ordinary card sort. One of the constraints that I had was that all of the departments needed to be represented all in one study, but that one study also needed to be completed in 45 minutes or less. The website sold 250 million unique items. So I got some marketing and sales data, and I got to admit that the data nerd in me was really excited to be playing with all that data. And I created a stratified random subset of 60 items from those 250 million items across 10 departments. So I went to a store and I had my optimal workshop link in one hand and a stack of Cabela's gift cards in the other, and recruited anyone that was willing to give me some time in exchange for that gift card. Some of the most interesting findings was that each and every person that I talked to always had a sort of catch-all category. There were just items that didn't belong in any other categories that they were imagining. Another really interesting finding was that anything that was related to hunting clothing, people had a hard time putting that into either its own category or hunting or clothing. And it was just sort of a mismatch along the way, and really should have been looked at further, what was behind that. But this was the last project that I did in this role, so I didn't get to see how my findings or my recommendations were received by either company. So I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that Bass Pro Shops in 2019 was an $8 billion company, and that they have changed the structure of their categorization for hunting clothing. So a lot of work for what seems like a minor change, and I can't necessarily take any credit for it. I can't guarantee that. But at the scale of $8 billion, that's worth it. Thanks.
All right. So that is my presentation, and I would love to open it up to questions. Before I do, if you would like to join my mailing list and get a couple of nuggets a month of hunting career advice, go ahead and put your email in the chat window. And if you want it private, just send it on over to me. I will add you. But if you go to this website down here, you can automatically sign up for the email list, and it will also send you an e-booklet with 7 things that you need to do to build your UX credibility. So that's there. Awesome, Katie, I will add you. Thank you so much. You should go get the ebook as well. Just saying, it's a good ebook. All right, so Allison, how do we open this up to questions? Or can I just start with you? I have a question for you.
For me?
Since you were there at Cabela's with me, can you give me your reaction to that video? You know the context.
A lot of nostalgia.
I saw a little smile and nods.
Yeah. It definitely highlights, I think, some of the larger challenges we had. And I think a lot of researchers might feel sometimes where you put in a lot of work and kind of believe in your findings and your recommendations so much, and you expect them to be received and implemented immediately. And that is a lesson I've been learning throughout my career, that sometimes they don't go anywhere, or sometimes there's a really long time before people are ready to receive them, or do things with them. And a lot of work goes into it, and you have to kind of, remove your feelings from it, or at least I have, in that job. That happened to me a lot.
Yeah, this was actually hard for me to put together. It's been a few years now, but I looked over the case study that I have on it, on my website, and I just remembered when I left, like, you're under NDA, you can't show anything, like this craziness. And that's another challenge that people have, is that they've done this work, they're under NDA, and they have no idea how to show that they are a great UX researcher without violating that NDA. I will admit that by sharing some of the key insights, I was pushing it there, but I still don't feel like I crossed the line. Would you agree with me, Allison? You don't have to. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I have definitely struggled with that too. It's so hard to create a public-facing portfolio because of all the NDAs, all the companies we've worked for. Even startups that don't exist anymore, sometimes I'm still unsure. Can I talk about that? Can I talk about what I did? Even if they're bankrupt and non-existent now, I don't know, because I signed some things. Yeah. So I find myself, doing things like saying something that sort of reveals what it is without naming it by name, or I've heard other people in other events throughout Boulder Startup Week refer to companies that you kind of scratch your head and you're like, are they talking about Google? I think they're talking about Google. But you kind of talk about it a little bit indirectly to describe the work you did. But it's a lot of extra effort to do that.
Yeah, it ends up being worth it, right? We have Mr. or Mrs. iPhone over here who said they lost 8 years of work because of an NDA.
Wow.
Right? Like that could look like an entire gap just because, you're being a good soldier, but really that's your work, and you have to be respectful to the NDA, but there's still something in there that you can talk about. I wanted to point out that some of the other things that I didn't share in that video is something that Allison brought up, that I was personally attached to how my work was going to be received. I was personally connected to how I thought our team should work, and it really wasn't. So those 3.5 months were a bit of an emotional struggle for me, right? But I figured out a way to still be able to tell that story with a smile. And it comes down to, what am I proud of as far as that work is concerned. And I love information architecture, and really at that scale is amazing. Now, did it go smooth? Did I get the actual method that I wanted? No, but that's also part of working with me, right? Like, even though it's important what you don't say when you're in an interview or building your assets, just as much as what you do say, I guess, is my point there.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah. So I would love to open it up for questions. John, thanks for saying that it was a great story. And I created the video just for this talk, and I don't know, maybe I could throw it on my portfolio. Who knows? So who out there is struggling looking for work? What questions do you have? They're probably all typing. Allison, the remote research panel was awesome. What can you draw as far as a parallel between doing the work and getting the job? Is there anything that kind of bubbled up from hearing this presentation and that other one yesterday?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of lines that we can connect. I think that after spending, the last 8 weeks or so working remotely, if you're like me, you didn't think you could do it before, and now I'm really confident that I can work remotely. And I never would have considered applying for remote jobs. So I think it's really important, like what you've taught us today, to make sure that you let employers know that. My resume, before was definitely just saying the things I did, the research methods that I, am expert in. But this is definitely changed the way I'm thinking about how I present myself. And you had so many great tips on how to express it in more ways than just the bullet points on the resume. I've got a lot to think about.
Awesome. Well, if you ever want to, we're about to launch the beta program for None to Done, and you're absolutely welcome to join us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to sign up.
Yes. We have a couple of questions. Wait, back up. Have you ever had to or tried to convince an employer to allow you to work remote that didn't offer it? I love working from home. Like I own my own business for 10 years. So I wouldn't say that I've convinced them successfully. Oh no, the trash truck is here. See, there's another thing, right? Like you have to deal with these random things that come up. How am I going to handle this? Do I get up and close the window? I'm not sure. Do I just scream over it? Is it really bad for you guys, the noise?
It's done now.
Oh.
Yeah, cool. It really emphasized your point.
So I don't feel like I have a really good answer for that, because any time that I've tried, it wasn't just me making that argument. It was kind of a swell of people, and we were able to like take a day off and work from home. So I'm not the expert on that one. So I will go to the next question. It seems like UX research positions require a lot of research experience. What kind of entry-level positions are out there for someone just getting started? One of my favorite entry-level positions is called a UX coordinator. And that is essentially a product manager or an assistant that helps you schedule all of your recruits. This person can easily go do the recruiting for you. So managing all of the emails and the calendaring and communication back and forth, and sending any gift cards or reimbursements or things like that. And I love working with a coordinator. Alice, I see you nodding. Have you worked with a coordinator before?
One of my first job after college, I was a research coordinator in a lab of a bunch of PhD students at the Center for Cognitive Neuroscience at Duke. And it's such a great entry-level job. I think that's a great recommendation for a place to start, because you get exposed to so much research. You end up getting to do some of the research, but you're helping people so much by doing the little tasks that are super time consuming that a senior researcher doesn't have time for. But yeah, those emails, coordinating payments and scheduling and things like that. It's something that at every job after that, I've wished that there was someone who was doing that for me. And I'm starting to see research operations roles popping up more places. I think it's finally, it's really catching on because it's such a critical position. But I think it's something that you can get into without a lot of deep experience. So yeah, I would look for roles that have titles like research ops, research coordinator. Yeah, great place to start.
Yeah, there's also a Slack channel for research ops. So I would bet that they have some job postings as well. And with it being remote, they've got to be that much more accessible to get. I'm going to have one more question. I know we're over, but this is such a great question. Any tips for juniors with no experience trying to break into the tech industry for the first time and build that confidence to secure the hire? So there's a couple pieces to this question, but like this is the bread and butter of my coaching. So this is why I wanted to answer it. So many times people, they're in their mid-career. I mean, if you're 18, I'm sorry, you don't really have a career history, but if you're not, you've done stuff already. And most of the time when people are switching careers, they think that they're starting from ground zero. You're not. There is a way to distill your story, like I mentioned, to bring forward things that are UX research related or design. I think you didn't mention that for sure. Bring those forward to try to explain why you're going where you're going and how it relates and how this transition is one that makes sense, right? Like a caterpillar isn't turning into a wolf. A caterpillar turns into a butterfly, and there's a reason, and it's a big transformation, but it's a very logical step-by-step process, and you have to do that for yourself. Everything you did before, there's some sort of threads that you can weave in together, and it's very difficult to do on your own because you basically are seeing the trees for the forest and all of that. So I would get a friend, get a coach, get someone that you can bounce some ideas off of to try to pull out those threads and figure out exactly what they are. Having that story and filling it with some examples of what you are doing, whether they're side projects and not getting paid for them just yet, is what's going to give the hiring managers that confidence that you're a safe bet. All right. On that note, I appreciate everybody for letting me go over 4 minutes. You're very welcome. And I will get those emails onto my email list, and I can't wait to get to know you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony, for this presentation.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.